Hey everybody, this video is on today's assignment. There's one on period for today, the period of sinusoidal functions. There's one on amplitude, and there's one on midline. So you can see it's all three right here. So this one, we're asked to find the period of the function. All right, so let's talk about what the period is. The period is when it goes through a full cycle, right? So how long it takes as far as the x values go. For it to, so let's say we start here, it comes up here to the midline, and then it goes to the top, back to the midline, back to start. That's a full cycle. So what's the distance then from here to here? So we can tell because this is like at the midline, which is a fourth of a cycle, right? So if we start here and go backwards, let's say it'd be down to here would be one part of that cycle. Back to the middle would be 2, to the top would be 3, and back to the midline again would be 4 if I started there. So then this is a fourth of a cycle, right? So if I find the distance between these 2 points, 8.7 and 6.2, then I should just be able to multiply that by 4 and get the period. So I got my little calculator here. So 8.7 minus 6.2, that's a distance of 2.5, and that's a fourth of a cycle, so multiply that by 4. So the period ought to be 10 in this problem, so 10 units. All right, so let's talk also, since I got it open, let's talk about amplitude. Amplitude is the distance from the midline to the top or the bottom, right? So we call this a crest, we call this a trough. So what's the distance from here to the trough? That's the difference in those y values, right? So the amplitude for this function, whether it's sine or cosine, it looks like a cosine function, but a sine and cosine functions are really the same. They're just shifted, one shifted over a little farther than the other. So 8.7 minus, no, sorry, I don't want that. I'm looking at the y values. So 7.2 minus 3.8 is 3.4. So the amplitude of this function from here to here is 3.4. All right, and if you remember, when you're drawing a sinusoidal function, you have this f of x equals a. So that's your amplitude, right? Sometimes it's a capital A, right? Times, let's just go with sine. It could be cosine, but sine of kx. Right? So this, remember, period is 2 pi over k, right? So in this, if I wanted to write the actual function for this thing, I know it would. This value right here would be what I just found on my calculator, right, which is 3.4. So that would be like f of x equals 3.4 times the sine. And then k, I would find by replacing the period with what we just found it to be. It was 10, right? So that would be 10 equals 2 pi over k. And then you can just swap those out. So that's k equals 2 pi over 10. And we could reduce that. So k is pi over 5. So this value right here would be pi over 5. Right? And then, of course, it's been shifted up. So since the midline is at 7.2, this would be plus 7.2 right there. So there is a shift. And there would also be, there's supposed to be an x in here, right? There would also be a shift, a phase shift, right? So it's left or right here. You can see the peak is not hitting the y-axis, so it has been shifted over a little bit. So there would be a number in there as well that I would put right beside this x. All right, so that's a reminder of a previous assignment that we did. What else? So we're talking about amplitude, midline, and period. The midline is super easy. That's just y equals that number right there, right? So if you're asked to find the midline, it would be y equals 7.2 in this case, because the midline, we're told right there that the midline, its midline is at 8.7, 7.2. So y equals 7.2 is your midline. All right, let's look at another one. Right, this time, again, we're looking for the period. So top to bottom, back to top. So this is half of a period. So all I have to do is find the distance from 1.5 to 4.7 and double it, right, to get back to the top. So I would just do 4.7 minus 1.5 and then double it. So 6.4, that's the distance from peak to peak or trough to trough, right? Hopefully that's the right answer, 6.4. That's it. All right, let's take a look at some of the other ones you have to do. I've pretty much covered them all in that video, so if you want to stop watching and go to work, I'm sure you can, but I'll just look at one with the amplitude. All right, so below is a graph of trigonometric function that intersects its midline here and has a minimum point here. What is the amplitude? Well, it's just the difference, the y value between 2.75 and 6.25. So you subtract those. And you can't subtract the wrong way. You just ignore the negative if you do, right? So it would be, let's see. And actually, I don't even really, since I'm just looking for the absolute value, I could just use positive numbers. So I could do 6.25, even though they're negative, minus 2.75. And I get negative 3.5. Now, if you use the negatives, you do negative 2.75 minus negative 6.25. And you still get 3.5 either way. So the amplitude is 3.5. All right, here you're given a trough and a peak. So the amplitude is half the distance between these two, right? So again, since I don't care about the sign really, it's the absolute value of the distance here. I'm just going to use 11. Take away negative 3.7. But maybe to avoid confusion, I will just go ahead and use these numbers, right? So let me start with negative 3.7. Take away negative 11. So 7.3 is the distance from here to here, so it's half of that, which is 3.65. 3.65. All right, and let's take a look at that last one, which is midline. All right, let's see. The midline is going to be basically the line that is halfway between here and here. So, and it's the y values, right? So you just take the average of these two numbers. That's it. So if I want to find the midline, it's the average of 3.2 plus negative 1.6, which is that. Divide that by 2. So y equal 0.8. Y equal 0.8 is the midline. Let's see what's going on here. Below is the graph of a trigonometric function has the minimum point at 1.5 and an amplitude of 1.5. Okay. So its amplitude is 1.5, which means 3 is the midline, right? Because you got to go 1.5 up from here. Does that make sense? If its amplitude is 1.5, then you would just add 1.5 to this minimum to get to the midline. So it's 3. All right, here again, the midline is going to be the average between these two. So we're going to do negative 3.7 plus negative 11 divided by 2. So negative 7.35, which is right around here, is your midline. Y equals negative 7.35. All right, that should do it. Hopefully, if you needed help on that assignment, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.